Yo guys, I hope you're all good. On today's video I'm going to do a quick bike check stroke first thoughts on this, my brand new Santa Cruz Heckler E bike. I basically demoed a bike like you'll have seen on my social medias for the last couple of weeks from the guys at Ride Care in Gorms and absolutely loved it. I, like so many of you guys, were very skeptical about the whole e-bike thing. But yeah, I was absolutely blown away when I got to try one finally and just couldn't resist getting one. So first things first is the frame, of course. This is a Santa Cruz Heckler in size large, and I also tried out the medium because Danny's had a couple of those and I was really on the fence about what one to get. I've got a medium 50-10 but decided the large just felt a little bit nicer and a little bit faster. So basically this bike is essentially based on the R build that Santa Cruz do. It is the sort of entry-level spec that I have then adapted slightly with various sponsors parts and a few tweaks that I prefer. So the main difference between the spec that you'll see is probably the forks. The frames are all the same, they're all the Heckler CC carbon frames, but the forks are slightly different. So I'm running the RockShox Yari forks, whereas the rest of the models will be sporting Fox 36s. Not really noticed too much difference, to be honest, compared to the one I was demoing with the Foxes on. Both feel pretty good. These just look a little bit thinner when you're looking down on them and obviously not quite as stiff, but overall pretty stoked with them. The shock is the RockShox Super Deluxe Select, I think is what it is, bit of a tongue twister, and I think the higher models have another additional name added to it, like Ultimate or something like that, but again I'm not really too sure what the difference is, but this feels mint. With regard to setting the suspension up, I've just been keeping it pretty soft, and when I've been going out for rides I don't even change it compared to the mountain bike where I'd usually be like doing everything I can to make my bike climb better, stiffen up the suspension, locking forks out and stuff when you're going up the fire roads. On the e-bike I pretty much just leave it as it is for climbing and descending, because obviously you've just got the extra benefit of a battery to help you up the hills. So just looking at the cockpit and front end, I've got the race face stem that comes on it. I have upgraded the race face bars to the Santa Cruz carbon bars, which I'm pretty sure are specifically designed for the e-bike. Basically they have this thin groove on both sides that then goes internal, which means that you just get a little bit of a neater setup with the controls for the motor running basically through that groove into the bars, and then they're completely internally routed, which is pretty neat because obviously you just want to sort of stay clear from getting a real messy cockpit. The other thing I've upgraded compared to the standard R build is the seat post. The R build comes with a race face cable operated dropper seat post, which I tried and worked pretty good. The main reason I changed it was actually because I wanted a longer travel seat post. I was finding it was still just a little bit too high when I was coming to descending, and also when you're trying to do like kind of playful trial-y stuff, which believe it or not this thing still can do some of. So I've upgraded that to a RockShox Reverb AXS 170mm travel seat post. It's obviously pretty bling, just neatens up the front end a little bit with removing that need for any cables. Saddle wise, got the standard WTB Silverado seat. Overall feels pretty good, but to be honest I think on the e-bike you're always going to be up against it. Your ass definitely takes a bit more of a beating on the e-bike than it does on the mountain bike, just because you can go up the trails so much faster, you can ride flat ground so much faster. It's just a constant kind of bashing away. So I would probably recommend some padded shorts if you're going to be riding an e-bike, especially if you're going to go on a bit of a mission and spend more than a few hours in the saddle. So the remote for changing the modes of the motor is the Shimano E7000 remote. Nice and neat, and I'm pretty sure it's universal across all the models. It's literally just an up and down switch. I have updated the display unit from the E7000 to the E8000, just a little bit nicer colour display. Yeah, just looks really sweet and nice and sleek, but basically I'm in boost the whole time anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. Grips are the same grips I've been running on my trials bike for the last couple of years, and on my mountain bike it's the lizard skin McCaskill grips that feel mint. It's just nice to have the contact points the same on both the trials bikes, mountain bikes and e-bikes, just for feeling a little bit of consistency when you're riding. Gearing wise, got the SRAM NX Eagle 12-speed setup. The rear set's 11 to 52, so there's pretty good range on that, and it's a 34 tooth front chainring and then obviously the rear derailleur is a SRAM NX Eagle as well. Between riding it more often than I drive my mountain bike, riding it harder and changing gears when you're cranking some pretty steep climbs, it's pretty amazing that the gears have held up as well as they do and still getting pretty smooth shifting. The crankset is a Shimano M8000 cranks in 165mm. Again, seem to be holding up to the abuse pretty good. You'll have noticed, despite this bike only being, what, 10 days old, I've been riding it so much that I've already buffed it up a little bit. And I've definitely bashed the crank arms a fair few times on climbs and stuff like that on rocks pretty hard, and they seem to be holding up to the abuse pretty good. Pedal wise, I've got the Crank Brothers stamp pedals in size small. I ride the larger ones on my trials bike, but just for clearance and stuff, I prefer to ride the smaller ones on my e-bike and mountain bike, just to stop it bashing into stones and stuff. But even then, it's pretty hard to avoid hitting them on the climbs and stuff. Another nice thing on this bike is the E13 chain guide, which I'm pretty sure is specific to the Shimano motor and the 34 tooth chainring that comes on this thing. I guess with this thing being an e-bike, we can't overlook the motor. The motor is the Shimano Steps E8000. Again, I've not really got much to compare it to, but I'm absolutely blown away by what this thing can do. It is insane how much extra power it gives you, and the sort of speed difference up the climbs compared to riding the mountain bike. Like, I thought it would maybe be like an extra 30%, but I feel like you're firing up the climbs literally more than twice the speed as what you would on the mountain bike, if not more. It comes with a 504 watt-hour battery, which is integrated into the frame. Obviously it's pretty chunky, but it goes in there pretty nicely, and we've been finding it last pretty good. We've been going on these kind of hour-and-a-half absolute boost sessions and managed to do pretty much a day's worth of riding in an hour-and-a-half, and the battery holds up pretty well. Obviously, if you're riding in eco or trail mode, it's going to be a little bit more efficient. So one of the most obvious changes looking at this thing is I've swapped out the WTB wheels that come on this bike, and I have swapped those out for the Santa Cruz Reserve rims. I've got a 30mm Santa Cruz Reserve carbon rim on the rear and the 27 on the front, and I've built those up with Conti Baron tyres, rim pack foam inserts front and rear, with muck-off tubeless sealant and muck-off tubeless valves. Another main change is I've gone for the Magura MT7 brakes as opposed to the SRAM guides that this thing came on. I've obviously been running those on my trials bike for the past sort of 5 years. I've got these with the Storm 203mm rotors, but potentially looking to upgrade them to the 220mm floating rotors that those guys do, just to help a little bit with the power, because this thing is carrying a little bit extra weight compared to the mountain bike. You'll also see I've got this extra little trinket attached to my bike. It is the Muck-Off BAM all-in-one sort of sealant and CO2 cartridge. It's nice to have a little bit of backup and not need to carry a pump and patches and tubes with you, just in case you get a puncture when you're out in the trails. Yeah, so there you have it. That is my Santa Cruz Heckler e-bike. I literally cannot say enough how much fun this thing is. Like so many of you guys, I was totally on the fence about e-bikes when they first started coming out. I didn't really quite grasp how much extra they're going to give you on the ups. We're literally finding ourselves being able to ride up stuff that you just would not be able to get up on the mountain bike, even at a slower pace. I also was expecting them to be a lot more limited on the descent, but there's definitely a sort of groundedness that you get on this thing that you don't get in the mountain bike that makes up for the thing being slightly less manoeuvrable. And yeah, it's still just as much fun on the descents. So that's the bike. Now we're going to go and have a little shred around the local trails we've got, show you this thing going up and down hills, and try and sort of give you guys an idea just how much fun this thing is. Oh my goodness. This bike is bloody fun. There you have it. This thing's pretty fun to ride. Thanks again for watching. If you do want to see some more videos, please hit subscribe and let us know in the comments anything you guys like to see us do next. Catch you in the next one. Peace.